So today we're talking about art. So I saw that there was a fan art contest for infinitynikki, and it's called the wait, let me look it up. Okay, so it says Sands of Memory fan creation event, and that's it. No real prompts for what they're looking for or the theme. But I guess that since we're currently in a very star and bubble oriented era, that's what I wanted to do. So I'm gonna take you through the creative process of making this submission, and hopefully you'll find it inspiring. Maybe you can get some ideas on how to get creative yourself. There's still some time left until the submission is closed. As far as I can tell, it goes on until the 25th of May. So even if you're not submitting something, it's always fun to do something creative, I think. And yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing that I like to do when I am making a specific piece of art is to gather a Pinterest board and to just put in like everything that inspires me. I had the idea of making it sort of 60s, but as you can tell from the final result, it sort of evolved as I was going, and that's fine too. But this is sort of what I had, and I ended up sort of using, let's see, I sort of used these pants as an inspiration for the pants that I made, and I ended up using almost this exact top. I found that there's actually some very simple tutorials, so I'd like to make one in real life, but we'll see. And I guess like I wanted to make a sparkly eye sort of like this one, but it's hard, it's a challenge to do when painting, but yeah, you'll see what I mean. Okay, so I ended up taking a lot of reference photos in game. Of course they didn't have the exact clothes that I wanted, but I thought that we could probably use a picture to work from. So I wanted to focus on high contrast because it's easier sort of when you're drawing something. And yeah, I was still looking for like the perfect pose, but it took a while. So these are just some of the examples. I ended up putting her in the shorter hair because I did want the option to paint my hair. I wanted the option to paint the hair myself, so I just wanted the hair sort of out of the way. I ended up choosing this picture, and in order to work with it, I wanted to make a little sketch, and just to have a basic of what I wanted to do, just to see that it would work. So I decided on like sort of this format for the picture, and I knew I wanted some like stars and bubbles, so I just popped on some circles and star shapes just to like see that I could really fill the space and that it wouldn't feel too empty. Yeah, this is kind of what I came up with, just like a simple structure with some bubbles, some stars, and I knew I was pretty happy with that, so I was gonna use that photo as the basis of my art. Okay, so once I had my picture selected that I wanted to use, I got it into Paint. I don't have Photoshop, that's expensive, but I feel like there's a lot you can do with just basic Microsoft Paint. So I decided to just remove some of the background and just to get it out of the way so that I could see what I was doing better. And then I worked with the layers, which is a new function for me anyway. I've used some Photoshop, but not a lot. But I decided to apply a second layer and to just sort of try and extract the general shape of her face. Because when you're, like, I don't know how to draw like photo likeness perfectly, and I wanted this to really look like Nikki. And when you're extracting like the shape of a face, you want to focus on the eyes, on the jawbone, on the nose, on the lips, and then you can just sort of fill it in again. like it's like a coloring book or something. And so I'm using the line tool to make the shape, and just like making sure that you pick up the general shape of everything. I decided to use a contrasting color just so that I could see that I had really picked everything up. I love drawing eyelashes. It's so fun. Since there was some hair in the way, I did have to like make a little bit of guesswork as far as the eyebrows and eyelashes go. Okay, so I kept using the contrasting colors just to make sure that I really got all the details. And I ended up changing a lot of this eye makeup later, but started out this way anyway. This took quite a long time, but the eyes are very important in order to really make it look like someone. Like if you get the eyes wrong, it's just not gonna look like Nikki. Yeah, and then I had to take a break because I had set a timer for the runway thing. So that's pretty much all that I did during day one. It's not a very creative outfit. Sorry about that. She's cute though. Okay, so day two, she's starting to look a mess. But I was very concerned with getting like the blush at this point, which I ended up pretty much eliminating in the final result. But yeah, as you can see, I've still been working on getting all of the features out, making sure that they're all accounted for before I recolor into the color that I sort of want. So I wanted to get that forehead right because I did want to remove all of this hair in order to draw my own. This is a choice, this makeup look. I don't know about it. As you can see, I'm working on the jawline here. Because I did want that to be just right. And again, using contrasting colors or different colors makes it so that you can really see that you're not missing any bits. I go down to a pixel level when doing stuff like this, and I find it kind of soothing to really like get detailed. And here I'm drawing the nose, and noses are very hard, as anyone who draws will know, especially when you have to make it look like a real nose. So I wanted to make sure that I got the shadows and I got the highlights, just so that I could blend it in later. So that's like the general shape of the nose. And also the chin has a bit of a highlight. This was the state of her face for a long time. But as you can see, I've started working on the eyes here, and I wanted them to be pink initially, but I ended up switching to blue later, and this was just to like make sure that I kept all of the dimensions of the eyes with the highlights and everything. Also, I wanted the white of the eyes to be really like correct. So I do spend a bit of time working on that. When you're using layers, you don't want to use actual pure white because that will be transparent if you set it up that way. So it's good to use like just an off-white, just a little bit. I mean, no one's eye whites are completely white anyway. What I like about working with layers is that you can just hide them and switch them and everything, and I'm kind of new to it, honestly. I've used a bit of Photoshop, but not so much. So there's more you can do. Like I could have done a whole entire layer for like the eyelashes, and then I could have just worked on a layer below, like with the eyeshadow, but you live and learn. I did want to get the eyebrows just right too. It's always hard with eyebrows. So I'm working on the mouth here. And I decided to use red because I did want to sort of mimic that gradient with the dark inside the lips, and then as it goes to lighter. It's a bit of it looks a mess, I know, but it won't in the end. So her face is taking shape. And I'm pretty happy with how the mouth turned out, actually. I mean, it's not perfect, but what is? Yeah, so I kept working on the eyes, making sure that I got all of the dimensions of them correct, so that if I wanted to recolor them later, I could. Which I did. Look at the state of her face. It's very much a trust the process type of thing when you're doing something like this. Watching the footage back, I do realize that occasionally I am in the wrong layer, but that's okay. You can always fix it later. That's the beauty of layers. So I ended up sort of making everything sort of the color that I wanted to later. Because I just wanted to get an idea of what it would all look like. The nose is a struggle. I'm not gonna lie about that. I don't like drawing noses that are really supposed to look like a real nose. I can do a nose fine when it's just like it doesn't have to look like anybody, but I did, like I said before, I really wanted this to look like Nikki. See, it all looks better when her eyelashes are black. I have a problem when I'm drawing that I'm always like, I try to focus on one space and then I just like go everywhere anyway. See, this is where I really could have used layers, because if I had layered the eyelashes separately, right, I could just make the eyeshadow whatever, just working below. But now I had to go in like in between the little eyelashes to fix the eyeshadow. But I did want it to be purple. I decided that fairly quickly. I did kind of want to use the Sea of Stars color palette for the makeup and the outfit as well. So I'm working on getting some shading in here. Just to get the nose right. What do you call this bit that I'm working on now? I could look it up, but I don't know what it's called in English. This bit. Oh, I am getting PTSD from this nose footage. Okay, so as you can see, the face is taking shape at this point. I was still missing a few bits, but I think I decided to work a bit more on the body because I didn't want to do anything to the face for a second. I did want to use the position that she was in. So I worked once again on focusing on sort of isolating the shadows and the highlights of the arms and the body in general. See, it's starting to look like something. Maybe. The hands were always going to be a struggle, so I did rely quite heavily on this, on isolating the shadows and the highlights for the hands, because hands are hard to draw. Not even AI can do it properly. But as you can tell, I'm just like sort of grabbing the shadows and drawing around them, which will make it look like a hand. When you zoom out, it's like a Monet thing, right? Once again, I did make a mistake in not making that arm that goes in front of the torso into a separate layer, because I did end up having, when I drew a top, right, I had to go back and sort of yeah, you'll see what I mean. That was dumb. And the collarbones also have a very clear like shadow and highlight to them, so that's pretty important in order to get the body shape right. The line tool is really useful when you're drawing, like when you're making like an edge, because you can shape it quite freely, and that helps a lot. I have a bit of a shaky hand, so free lining this, or just like drawing it with my mouse, I'm sure it wouldn't have looked as clean. Yeah, and I totally realized I was occasionally on the wrong layer here again. But it's a learning experience, right? Now I'm just sort of drawing on everything. And with the intention to blend later. Because you want to grab the highlights, you want to grab like the midtones and the shadows, and if you have all that, then everything is just a question of blending. I was working on the body a lot, and I wanted to get as much as possible out of the way from the original, because I did want to draw my own top. So I was just sort of trying to make sure that I had all of the skin uncovered, and I was also working on the hands, which are a pain, I'm not gonna lie. As you can see, I work on a pixel level. So yeah, now you got a lot of free space. So I'm using these circles to sort of get the shape of the elbow, and then I'm just gonna fill them all in with that color, but that helps to get the shape right. Now this is sort of where the shadows are. If I had pulled the contrast up a bit more in the game, I think I would have had an easier time, but it is what it is. Once again, I was on the wrong layer, so I had to redo what I did. We're jumping around a bit, but I did end up isolating the shape of the legs, removing the shorts so that I could really see what I was working with, but I did keep the belly button where it was supposed to be, because I did want it to look like the original body. I wanted her to look as much as possible as the original Nikki. What I love about painting digitally is that you can just jump around. You can always switch colors, you can always undo, you can erase, and it is a lot easier than drawing in real life, although I do like that too. Okay, so I removed the top completely at this point, but I kept the shape of the chest so that I could fill it in later. Hands took a long time, but hands are very fiddly to draw. Once again, I'm just sort of working to get like the areas out, so like the nail is one color, the highlight is one color, the shadow is one color. Maybe I should have given her some nail art, but you know, maybe next time. This footage is sped up, by the way, that I'm watching, and it's it took a long time, all of this, because I wanted it to be just right. Once you break hands down though to the lines and everything, it's not as daunting as it might seem, because every hand has like different bending points, right? And you want to make sure you get all that in there. This is basically just tracing, but digitally, and I don't think that's wrong. Well, if you're doing something original from the picture that you have, like, who cares if you traced a bit of it, right? It's it doesn't matter. It's just painting. It's just supposed to be fun. I'm using colors from the hand, using my pipette tool, just to make sure I sort of keep the essence of what the hand actually looks like, and then I can add in shades later. So as you can tell, I'm just sort of grabbing areas, like this is the highlight, and just like trying to isolate it, and you see that it does look like a hand, even though when you're up close it just looks a mess. It sort of looks like Nikki, right? At this point, sort of. So I finally removed the background because I felt like I had enough to just work on it without any sort of template behind it. But I did notice I had been a little bit sloppy with my white bits. As you can tell, when it's transparent, right, you're gonna lose some of that white. Well, you're gonna lose all of the white. So I just had to fill it in again. And also you can now really tell like which bits I am actually missing, because I did paint over the other layer. But at this point it's just about making sure that it's a cohesive picture, since I didn't have any extra layers at this point. So I'm just filling in like the blank areas that were previously white. I've never drawn a bubble before, and so it's a bit of a struggle. Apparently I'm missing the tutorials that are right there. But I did start trying to make a bubble, but I didn't end up very happy with it, so I made them later. Okay, so at this point I just wanted to start on the hair, because I was trying to do bubbles but I was failing, and I just wanted to sort of see what I could do. I ended up drawing it later, but I had a bunch of ideas. Like I wanted it to be like a bouffant, like a 60s sort of hair or a massive hair, but I wasn't really sure. But I was sort of trying like different ideas for what it would be shaped like, and this would be like the back of the hair. So I thought that I would draw the back of the hair separately and then do like the front bits on another layer. This was the back section that I was thinking of. Nothing was really turning out, and that's part of the process too, I think. It's just like testing what works, what doesn't work. And I did do the hair way later. But yeah, it's the beauty of drawing digitally is that you can test as much as you want. This is crazy hair. That looks like with the makeup too, it looks a bit clownish. Like when I'm drawing with pen and paper, I think I'm pretty good at drawing hair, but this hair was not. It was just not turning out. But I guess I wanted to show you stuff like that too that I ended up not using, because I just want you to know that it's okay to try. Just try something. Maybe it'll turn out, maybe it won't. I think maybe the blush is throwing me off because everything looks clownish. So this is like the top layer I'm working on now, just to like see if I can make it look good. But it doesn't look good. I mean, look at that. That looks like a homeless Nikki. So I'm still like struggling with the hair here. I was looking for inspiration on Pinterest once again. And I did know that I wanted the hair to be sort of 60s, but I really wasn't feeling anything that I was doing, and also had failed. I'd failed earlier trying to make bubbles. And I do think that I could have done something with this, but as you can tell later, like the hair is not gonna look like this. Like this could have been cute, but I guess I just lost faith in it. Like if you've been working on a creative project maybe a little too long, you're gonna think that everything looks like absolute crap, and that's part of it, I think. So like now, when I'm not actually working on this hair, I can see that, yeah, this could have been something. This could have been cute. But at the time, I was like, no, this all looks bad. And it's terrible. And that's a cue for when to stop, right? You need to take a break if you think that everything you're doing is just bad. Take a break, go do something else. You know, just like come back with a set of fresh eyes to your creative project. And I'm sure, you know, that always helps me anyway. That's like a fairly cute bang. Maybe a bit wide. I am using the marker pen when doing this because it's a little bit opaque, but not very. So, and I did want it to look a bit hand painted. So I used a lot of the different brushes that paint has. And yeah, this is the watercolor pencil, which is a little bit lighter. Yeah, the bang is okay. It's not perfect, but I didn't like it, even though I didn't end up using it. Really sick of the hair at this point, because it wasn't really turning out the way I wanted. And I did drop it, which was probably good. But this is cute. This could have been cute. And I should have just stepped away for a minute. And my webcam is covering the clock, but this was after midnight. And I did need to stop. I really did. Because I kept doing stuff that I wasn't pleased with. I don't know what I'm doing here. It's not good. I should have just gone to bed. That's my feeling watching this back. That's like the downside though of paint, is that you can't save it like a project with layers. But so if you wanted to do something, you would have to be pretty sure that this is what you wanted. And as I was tired, I didn't feel like it was good. So I just erased it all. and eventually went to bed. Okay, so I did give her some temporary hair, and then I just decided to work on the eyes. I'm jumping around a lot, but that's because that's the way that I paint. It's not a linear type process. I like to sort of skip around. If I'm bored with one bit, I just go to another. This was all about like filling in the eyes, because I did want the eyes to be blue, because my Nikki's eyes are always blue, and I thought that that would make a nice contrast as well to the purple that I was using everywhere else. Eyes are usually very complicated. Like, if you look at your own eye, like, it's got all kinds of little colors and lines and stuff. So I didn't want to use like color blocks, but I wanted it to be a bit more dynamic. As you can tell, I'm sort of skipping between the eyes, and that's in order to make sure that I get all of the colors in both eyes, because I'm sort of painting and like making colors as I go. So if I lose a color, then I want to be able to, I don't want to lose colors, so I'm applying it to both eyes so that I have it. Yeah, as you can tell here, she's got some temporary pink hair, because I thought I was doing curls for a while, but that's going to change. It's on a separate layer anyway, so it's easy to remove. I'm going sort of over the middle of the eye, the black bit, because that's, you can always add in more black in later. And I did want the eyes to be very impactful, not too much black. This is like a Monet thing again. It looks a bit messy when you're close, but when you zoom out, it looks quite nice. I'm adding in some shading to the corners of the eyes, because they're not like a pure white in real life, so. And also you want to make them pop a little bit. And then I'm blending using white, just to take the edge off. Also adding some highlights with white, which makes them look quite dynamic. And I'm applying the same shading to the other eye as well. So I'm blending in the eye, so using the different blues to sort of smooth out the edges, making sure there aren't any hard lines in the actual eyes. So as you can tell, I'm reducing the amount of black using blue and white, because I wanted the eyes to be very colorful. So I made a start on the top without filming. But I was trying to do this sort of star shape, and I wanted to draw my own. That was very inspired by the star-shaped top that we saw earlier. And I'm doing this on a separate layer, so that I can test out the shape before I commit to it. I think everyone can draw a star, but I was struggling a little anyway. I was getting quite tired, I think. So I'm just filling the star in with sort of the color that I want for later. And of course I'm gonna blend all of this. But this was just to see like how it would look. I didn't want the star to be like completely symmetrical. I kind of wanted it to look like fabric, like maybe a little bit fluffy, so I didn't want the edges to be so sharp. And I do try to soften it a bit, I think. Yeah, see, I'm making the star a little bit bubbly and not super sharp. This was just a matter of like trial and error to see what would work, what would look good. Like this is not looking very good, but it ends up being okay. I was just trying out different methods here to see what would look nice. Layering different colors and everything, that gives it a lot. It looks a little bit thicker, and it looks more interesting than just having it one solid color. Okay, so at this point I wanted to make the outside darker because I wanted the star to be lined. So I went in with this sort of crayony looking tool. I was like deep in a true crime podcast at this time, and I kind of remember what they were talking about just watching this footage back. But like, that reminds me of school. I would draw a lot, like in my little books, my notebooks, and that would help me remember what was being said, even if I was drawing something completely unrelated to the topic. Because memory is weird. I know some people have to take notes, and I need to be drawing, and then I'll probably remember what was being said at the time. So I was working outwards with the star, and I did know that this bit would be covered up by the hand, so I wasn't super careful with it. And this is absolutely where I made a mistake and should have put the hand on a separate layer, because I do end up having to go back and erase bits of the star just to make sure that the hand appears to be on top of it. As you can tell, I'm going over what I've done previously with a bit of a darker pen just to make sure that it has some dimension. I mean, should I have gone in with an eraser at this point? Yes, but I didn't. So I'm not using the line tool here, but I'm just free drawing it. Just sort of going around the shape that I did previously. I wasn't sure how big I wanted the top to be. So I was sort of just making it up as I went along. It's past 1 o'clock at this point, but I was just in the zone, which is such a good feeling when you're making something. Yeah. I had this hair for a while. I was sort of leaning in this direction, but I ended up changing all of it. Okay, so I got bored of the top and I started working on the lips because that's just what I do. I can't focus on one thing too long. As you can see, I've scrapped all of the hair because I was just not happy with it. And I just went into shading a little bit in the face. I just wanted the skin tone to be a bit more even because I had used a whole bunch of brushes on the face. And looking at Nikki, like, her face doesn't have pretty much any texture to it. So we had to erase that. Also, I wanted to make sure that I blended in the highlights and the shadows properly, as well as the blush. I feel like it would have been fun to do a more extreme makeup look, but maybe another time. The mouth is pretty good in shape, but I wanted to, of course, blend it to make sure that it didn't stick out too much. I didn't want a red lip for this particular look. I wanted it to be quite neutral, sort of pink. Nothing fancy. So I was applying this very dusky pink, and then I was going in with a lighter pink to give the lips a bit more of a dimension. I keep zooming in and out when I'm painting because I want to see like what the actual effect is of what I'm doing, because if you're always very close, you lose track of like the bigger perspective. Okay, so I grabbed my top layer because I had that on a separate and I just posted it into this one, adding a new layer. And I noticed that there was actually quite a bit of since I had used the pencils, right, it creates quite a few pixels around the edges. So I had a job to do, which was to erase all of that and maybe commit to the layer instead of erasing it. So I decided to just alter it a little bit before posting it into the main picture. So I just had to go in with an eraser and try to remove all of the bits that weren't supposed to be there, right? This is the struggle of not having Photoshop, which is that you cannot save projects with layers using MS Paint, as far as I know anyway. Maybe there is a way. So that would have saved me quite a bit of time, which would have been nice. Okay, so I fixed the top, and I added it to my main picture. So as I had made a total mess of the hands, I did need to blend them in. So I went in with purple around the hands, just to get all of that white off that I didn't want to be there. And as you can tell, I have a lime green that sort of marks some of the edges, just so that I can make sure that I don't erase too much. So now that I have the top in place and in the proper layer, I can work sort of around it and fill in all of the parts of the body that are going to be visible. I kind of decided that the top was supposed to be the size that it is now, so then I could just focus on drawing a bit on the skin, making it look a bit more dynamic. I didn't want it to be like perfect, but I did want it to look nice. So I'm just blending and blending, trying to get the colors to all sort of mesh together, going over the shadows and the highlights that I added before, not fully erasing them, but just softening them. So I'm adding the highlight back to the arm, but also trying to make sure that it doesn't blend into the lower arm doesn't blend into the upper arm. So I started using the airbrush on the top, and I kind of love the way that it looked. So there's actually gonna be a lot of airbrushing in this video. I thought that the effect was a little bit it looked a bit fluffy when adding an airbrush. So I like that. I think the airbrush is a good tool. It's a bit tricky to use, but once you get the hang of it, it can really create a good result. So I decided I wanted the top to sort of cut off at this length. So I'm just drawing in the side bits to make sure that she's not completely naked, just fluffing. I am incredibly zoomed in here. But that's the way that I work. I wanted to make sure that all of the areas, that there wasn't just one color, but that it would be a little bit mixed with a lighter and a darker, just to give it a better look. This is just like the basis of what the side would look like, and I've learned my lesson from the hand thing, so I'm not drawing over the edges and leaving it, but I'm erasing it straight away, so that I don't have to go back and erase later on an area that's a lot harder to see. So that's like the top at this point. So I'm about 700% zoomed in here. But as you can see, I'm working to sort of blur the lines a little. So I'm adding in some more dark purple, because I do want the color to be dynamic. Very mindful of not going over the hands. I've learned from my mistakes at this point, and I was quite happy with it. So I decided I wanted to start working a little bit on the eyes. As you can see, I'm just sort of working to fill in, to go over the purple bits that I had before. And not fully covering it, but just going over it so that it would look a bit natural-ish. I did want the purple to be quite dark though, and to add in some highlights later. I ended up filling the eyes in quite a bit because I liked the way that it looked. But still keeping the shape of her eyelid. I'm sort of breaking my own rule here by doing one eye at a time. Normally I would probably try to do both, like I was doing with the actual eyeballs before, just to make sure that they have the same color. But I guess I was just sort of trying it out to see what it would look like. So I'm trying to replicate the other eye here. But of course eyes aren't always the exact same shape, are they? So I wanted to make a glitter effect, and to do that you need a contrasting color, and just a little bit, just like some pixels, because when you zoom out that's gonna make it look like there's glitter. See? You're welcome for that tip. As I didn't have the eyelashes on a separate layer, I did have to go back and fill them in a little bit. I think I like drawing eyelashes like the most out of everything. I don't know why that is. It's just something pleasing about it. Okay, so I need a strap for the top. And once again I'm using the line tool to get sort of a natural shape. I didn't want the straps to appear super thick, so I went quite close to the edge of her body. I kept fiddling with this blush. She ends up not having very much blush at all. And also I'm just cleaning up the edges. Continuously cleaning up the edges, while also sort of blending in the whole face. That's kind of what I learned in art class anyway, is to sort of work everywhere. Sort of jumping around and using that color in a lot of areas, because then it's all gonna look more cohesive in the end. So once again I am back at the hands, just to blend and make all of the sort of choppy bits into a more cohesive sort of color. So I'm just blending and blending, just like blending throughout and zooming out to check that what I'm doing looks good. I don't mind that it looks a bit painted. I think that looks good. Like I don't mind seeing a few brush strokes. I'm using a lot of the oil brush and the watercolor brush. This face, I've worked so much on it, and that's for good reason, isn't it? That's the most important bit, in order to make it actually look like Nikki, but also be my own version of it. And this nose looks a mess when you're up close, it really does. But I kept zooming out on it and I thought it looked quite nice, like in the overview. Like when you see it, the picture, the nose looks okay. Okay, so this is like the third day or the fourth day. I have absolutely lost count, but this is where she was at. At one point she was bald. She was missing most of her head. I was pretty much done with the eyes, most of the face, the top, eyebrows as well, I fixed. And yeah, it was time to start wrapping up some of the little areas that I'd been ignoring. So I kept working on the lips, but also I wanted to make sure that I wasn't destroying the shape of them in the process, so I kept zooming out to just check. And I think that they turned out okay. So once again, as I'd used the paint brushes, you do get a bit of pixel fallout. So I had to go in with an eraser once again to just remove some of that, because I did want her to stand out from her background properly. Okay, so I decided to start working on the jeans. And I know I wanted them to be a bit lower than the jeans in the original picture. I decided to bring a picture up of a pair of jeans, just so that I could get like a proper reference. So I saved that in order to keep it sort of up so that I could look at it when I was painting. I like to look at a reference when I'm drawing, but it's just a reference, right? You don't want to do it exactly the same, but it's good to have some help. So I wanted star shapes on the pants, but I wasn't quite sure where I would place them. So I was just kind of fiddling around with it, and I put a star up for a reference in the picture so that I could use that as like a template. Like, would you know what this is if you didn't know what it was? I am very close. I thought the jeans looked a little wonky in the picture that I was using for a reference, so I was sort of struggling with how to apply things. At first I was going to make the stars very big, but I ended up changing them so that they were a little bit smaller. This sort of top hem bit was quite skinny at first, and I wasn't very happy with it, but I realized it was because it was too small. So I ended up lowering them a little. Okay, so I filled the jeans in because I did want them to be purple, but I was a little bit stumped on how to continue with them for that just then, so I just decided to clean up some edges, because you always need to be doing that anyway. Okay, so I ended up lowering the jeans, the top bit, because I did realize that it was too skinny, and also that would make the jeans appear like they were a bit lower waisted. I found a sequin. Can you see it? Okay, so I've thought that the denim would look a bit more realistic if I just added some texture to it, or like add some little fake stitching. So that's what I did. Also, it gives it some shape when you add some highlights. I just tried to make it look a bit like fabric, but also cartoony. Now, it's not entirely even, but I think that adds to the hand painted effect. That's where the button's gonna go. Yeah, I did want the button to be golden as like a tribute to the new Miracle outfit, which has got golden details on it. I was thinking about having golden stars on the pants, but I ended up making them purple. So I was freehanding the stars. Well, not entirely because I used the lines, but I wanted to make my own stars. But I did have a star there just to have an idea of what I sort of wanted it to look like. I wanted to smooth out the edges until I was pretty happy with the final result. Okay, so I ended up being pretty happy with the star, but I altered the shape a little, and I also copied it to the other side, the design that I had done. So I was thinking that this should be a pocket, but I wasn't entirely sure how I would do that, so I just ended up scrapping that idea. I wanted it to look like there was some thread around the edges, so I just went in with a lighter shade just to add a little bit of a dimension to it. Also, I didn't want the edges to be so dark, so I made a lot of it a lot lighter. I'm zooming in and out a lot, and that's because I need to check like how it's actually going to look, because I work very close to the picture and you need an overview every now and again. It took me some time to work out the texture that I wanted. A lot of layers on this. A lot. So I'm still working on the top here, even though it's pretty much done. And that's just because I want everything to fit together color-wise, pants and top. I quite enjoyed the effect that I got from adding this sort of colored pencil above, like the layers that I had painted before. I thought that it gave it a nice texture. Okay, so I wanted more stars. So I copied the star from one side and I just put it below the star on the other leg. So I did want the stars to be just a little bit uniform on the pants, so I just got to work trying to make it fit, and I wasn't like really feeling it, so I was just trying some like placements to see what would work. So I grabbed both stars and I just isolated them from their background so that I could paste it easier on the other leg, because I was of course just gonna blend it a bit later. I wasn't sure exactly where I wanted the star. I ended up just putting it below the other one, and also I decided to save the stars because I did want to use them for the background as well. I was quite happy with that. I was playing around with the idea of having more stars, but it just wasn't turning out, so I just blended the stars in. I love to watch like documentaries or listen to true crime podcasts when I'm drawing or doing something creative. I'd be doing something cozy while listening to something horrible. I don't know what that is. It's a good combination. I'm a little bummed. I forgot to film when I was doing this button. But I basically just filled the shape in that I had there previously, added a star in the middle, and just painted. I had the idea to put the button on the collar as well, off the top, but I ended up not doing that. I was playing around with the buttons because I thought it was so nice, but I couldn't find anywhere else to put it. Okay, so we're back on hair. Still trying to make some sort of hair happen. And I was quite inspired by this picture, but it ended up not really looking like it at all. But this is kind of what I wanted. I'm just using block color here just to get the shape. And then adding detail later. And this is just the front bit of the hair. Once again, I was trying to do the front in a separate layer than the back. And now I'm looking at back layers, and this is a lot better today, I thought. I really enjoyed this sort of shape. So it was just a matter of sort of getting it right. This was just a matter of figuring out the shape. As you can see, I do have a reference picture up, but I am obviously not using it very much. I'm just coming up with my own sort of shape that's vaguely inspired by this. I didn't want to cover up too much of the face. That's because I had spent so much time on it, but I did feel like it was improving. So I was just fiddling around with the hair for a long time, but I think that it turned out quite good, and I do like that it looks painted, because this is a painting, so I don't mind that at all. I don't know if I got the Nikki pink completely right, but I like this pink. I really like pink hair on Nikki. I used to have pink hair a long time ago, and it's just, it's a great hair color. Commands attention. So I kind of considered her to be done at this point, apart from just some tiny polishing. So I wanted to start working on the background, and I wanted to use the stars that I had drawn for the legs, and I also wanted to do some bubbles. So I started out with the stars, and I was just sort of copy pasting them based on my sketch that I pulled up here. Not that they had to be placed in any specific way, I just kind of wanted to use them to fill out like blank spaces, to make sure that the image felt very full. So I just started putting the stars sort of everywhere, and I did change the color of them, and I probably should have done that at this point, but I just added them in like this, and they're a bit messy, but I do fix that later. I just wanted them to be like a couple of different sizes. I wanted to flip them a little so that they didn't all look too samey. Also, I wanted a lot of room for bubbles, so I didn't want too many stars. Also, I had to decide on what color I wanted the actual background to be. I wasn't sure, and I thought that the airbrush looked quite good, so I know I wanted to use a lot of airbrush. I thought about using a heart, but I wanted to stick to the theme of bubbles and stars. So since I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, I just started to clean up the stars a little. I could have done that before, but I didn't. So I had a lot of cleanup to do. So I was trying to decide on a color for the background, and still didn't know what to do. So I just kept adding stars. As you can tell, we come a long way from the original sketch. Sometimes I make sketches like that, and I expect people to understand that I have a vision, which is probably not obvious from looking to the right, but looking at the picture now to the left that I've been working on for so many hours, you can see that I am still working towards that original vision, and this is sort of what it looked like in my head. And we're still to add the bubbles, but you can really start to see everything come together at this point. So I decided to make the stars blue, and I don't know why I didn't just make them blue in the first place. But yeah, I wanted to use the her eye color as the basis of the stars, and just sort of fill them in like this. I wanted them to look painted, and I don't mind that there's a bit of purple still left. I think it adds something. It makes them look a bit, I don't know, I think it makes them look interesting. Okay, so as you can see, I did about 3 different colors in the background, and I sort of just decided to blend them all together using the airbrush. Because I wanted the background to have some dimension. So I used a very soft pink, a soft lilac, and a bit more of an intense pink down in the corner. And as you can see, I'm just shading with my airbrush at this point, just making sure that the stars pop out a little using white, and yeah, just sort of blending everything together. I really like the effect of the airbrush. It's a bit tricky to use, but it can create like a really cool effect. And I think it sort of makes the picture come alive a little. I've yet to fill in all the stars because I was lazy, but I will eventually. I guess that I wanted it to look a bit like I don't know, it's abstract. It doesn't look like anything. I really was having fun with the airbrush. I think you can tell, and it looks so cool. So eventually I got to the bit where I did have to start filling in the stars, even though it was a little tedious. I ended up going back later and just highlighting them a little as well with a even lighter blue. This is just a base layer. I wanted all of the colors to be sort of soft and blended, nothing too intense. So I kept zooming out just to check, like, what does this look like? Where do I need some more light? Where do I need more color? And so on. With the airbrush, you really gotta go over the lines like so many times to get an effect, but that's kind of what's pleasing about it too, is that it takes some time, but it turns out good. So the background is, I feel like it gives me like sort of 90s wrapping paper vibes, which is something I enjoy. So I'm happy with the background. I'm happy with the way that it turned out. Originally, I thought that I would go for something maybe a little bit more color, like a stronger color, and more like just simple shapes, like very 60s, but it ended up being something else. And I think that's when it's really fun to paint, is that when you start somewhere else, but you sort of find that, no, actually, this is better. This is what I would like to do. Like, it starts out being something else, but eventually you just get to a point, and then it's like, oh wait, I can do this in a more fun way. Or, oh wait, I'm inspired by this bit. Okay, I'm gonna keep doing that. So that's what I like about creating stuff. It's freedom. Like, at the start of this project, I didn't think that I would enjoy the airbrush, or I didn't even know I was gonna use that, and then I just went to town with it on the background, and I had so much fun making the background. So it's nice that you can just see your project develop in real time and just like push yourself creatively to do something that maybe you didn't set out to do, and having your vision change midway. So yeah, I'm just filling in the stars because mistakes were made. So as you can see, I went over the stars with the airbrush, and I'm still just airbrushing away, but it is getting quite close to the end here. I just can't seem to put that airbrush down. Okay, so at this point it was actually time to draw a bubble, because I'd been putting it off. I'd been trying to make one every now and then, and I was just like, I don't know how to do this. So eventually I was just like, well, I'm just gonna try and do my best and see what we can come up with. And you know, it actually turned out okay. It's not a perfect bubble, but it's just simple, right? It didn't have to be perfect, but I did want it to look nice, because it's one of the themes, isn't it? Eventually, I sort of came up with something that I was pretty happy with. So once I started adding the bubbles, I did feel like it looks quite good. They don't look perfect, but I tried. I don't think I've ever drawn a bubble before. So, and I feel like you can see what it is. It's fine, right? And the bubbles are on a layer on their own, so I could just sort of move them around and adjust as much as I wanted to. And I kept sort of zooming in and out, adjusting, seeing what would fit. And yeah, I was thinking of having some in front of her too, but I didn't really want to cover her up too much. This is just the same bubble over and over again. It's hard to watch like the video back, because you keep seeing these like things that you would have done a little bit differently, or I want to tweak that, but there's also something to be said for just being done with a project, just deciding like, okay, this is it, now it's done. Because if you could just keep fiddling, it's never going to be done. And I would have missed the submission. I wouldn't have been able to make a video. It's just like, you can just take the experiences that you got and just use them going forward, instead of just like keep working over and over on something that you're never going to be done with. Sorry, I got a text. Once I had added all the bubbles, I just copied them all and flipped them around and just added them on top of the other one, so that it would look like there was a lot of bubbles. And I really liked that effect, so I kept it. I thought that it really looked like she was just standing in a gust of bubbles or something. So yeah, that's about it. Do you want to look at the final result with me? Okay, so here we are back at the original sketch. This is what it turned into. Ta-da! I love it. I'm so happy I did this. I had so much fun. Let's look at some detail, shall we? Okay, so I'm happy with the face. Oh god, okay. I got too eager. Okay, so the face turned out quite good. I'm pretty happy with the effect that the sort of fake glitter has. And the nose is a bit of a mess, but it does look like Nikki's nose, and the mouth is also a little bit of a mess, but if you zoom out, right, you can't tell. I'm actually obsessed with this background that I made. I can't believe I drew a bubble. I feel so talented. And yeah, the pants are quite good. I feel like looking at them now, it's so easy to be critical and think, oh, well, this bit should have been better and this bit should have been better, but you know, I'm gonna be nice to myself today and say that I did those. I made those pants and I'm happy with them. Here she is. This is my submission for the fan art contest. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching, and I hope that I can inspire you to draw something yourself or make something for the fan art contest. You still got 10 days to make an entry, so if you want to do that, I think that you should. Even if you're just doing it for yourself, right? It's always good to have an excuse to do something creative. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.